Hey everybody, before I get started, I just want to mention a couple of ways that you can engage with me on a more personal level. I have a few avenues set up and I keep focusing on one, and I figured why don't I make a short little video talking about all of them real quick before we get into these episodes. So first thing, Patreon. There's a link in the episode description and every episode description to the Patreon, as well as a video on the feed called Major Announcement that has all the details of what each tier offers and how much they cost. I implore you to check that out. I offer a lot of cool shit for my patrons. Second thing, the Discord channel. There's also a Discord link in the episode description and in every episode description. I have multiple channels set up there for each show that I'm covering, and it's a great way to just engage with me. I have a channel set up for MMA talk as well. I'm a big MMA fan, so if you're an MMA fan, you can check that out as well. There's a link to the Discord in the episode description. And then lastly, the Facebook and Twitter. Social media. Follow me on there. I post news on there. When I say news, I mean like, hey, I'm stopping covering this show. Hey, I'm starting covering this show. Let me know what you think about this. I do live watches of things on Facebook where like I'll check in and say I'm watching so-and-so show, and then I'll like live comment while I'm watching it, and that'll be cool if maybe you watch that show too and you want to watch along with me, or you're watching it later and you will see my thoughts, which are usually pretty entertaining because I'm usually pretty high when I'm writing them. So check out all those links in each episode description, and let's talk about this episode. Peace.
One mic, one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. One mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. One mic. One mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, and today I'm here to talk about Season 2, Episode 7 of HBO's Perry Mason. This is Chapter 15 in the overall series here. So, to call this an informative episode would be an understatement. Not only did we learn who is at least behind the killing of Brooks McCutcheon, but we also learned about the motives and why everyone was doing what they have been doing. I mean, there's so much that came to light in this episode. Let me adjust my camera real quick. It looks a little, there you go. It looked a little crooked to me. Anyway, there's still a couple of mysteries to uncover. I'm still unsure and doubting and questioning Anita and the overly horny teacher. But this episode set up what looks to be a great finale. So I can't wait to see what's going to happen. But let's talk about what we learned in this episode. I'm going to break it down by character again, starting with Perry. And then I'm going to have a section at the end, right before my thoughts, where I'm going to talk, in my notes, I labeled it as the bad guys, but it's where I'm going to lay out what I believe we learned in this episode about Lydell's motive, what Brooks was up to, what Camila was up to, the whole thing, right? So I'm going to lay it out, what I believe happened. But I want to start with the individual characters. Honestly, there's not going to be a lot here, just because like a lot of this episode was the shit that we learned, but I'm going to start with Perry. So this episode opens with Perry and Pete emerging from water with life preservers. And like, I could not figure out for the life of me what the fuck's going on. Like, how do you open the episode like this? But I'm not supposed to, because we flash back one day, and that's where we start to find out what led up to that moment. It was been a decent portion of the episode leading up to the moment that opens it. And then I think from that point on is when we start kind of like learning information. So Perry, Milligan, and Berger meet with the judge to decide how to handle the whole I hid the murder weapon in my personal safe controversy. And the judge says that Milligan and Berger have until Friday, which I think he said that was 2 days from now. So I guess it's Wednesday, to come up with a plan on, let's see, I wrote them down. How to move forward with the trial, avoiding a mistrial, how to make the gun admissible, and any charges they want to bring against Perry for hiding it. After this, Pete decides that he wants to meet with Perry, and we learned that it was in fact Pete who told Milligan and Berger about the gun. So I gotta take an L on this one. Whoever it was in the comments last week, it was like, yo, bro, you do it way too fucking much on the gun shit. You were right. It was just simple as Pete. I think my holdup was that Pete was too obvious, and I'm like, there's no way it's gonna be fucking Pete. That's way too obvious, but it was fucking Pete, even though that was way too obvious. But so yeah, I'll take my L on that one. Yeah, person in the comments, I'm sorry, I forget your name, bro, but person in the comments, you was right. I was doing way too fucking much. What was wild about this scene too is that Pete doesn't even actually admit that he did it. He's just like, yeah, you know, it's almost like this is Pete's form of apology. He's like, yeah, you know, sometimes I do shitty things to people I like because I get in bad situations, you know, like, yeah. Like, I'm sitting there like, what? What the fuck is this? Like, And Perry, I guess, pieces it together on his own that Pete is the one who was responsible for the whole gun situation. And they end up fighting, and Pete gets the ass whooping he so richly deserves. Although I would say it's. I feel like Perry won the fight, but like it wasn't like a slaughter. It was close, but I feel like Perry pulled it out. I was a bit bothered in the aftermath though, like not in a real way, as in like this is a knock against the episode. Just like as a person, I was a bit bothered by, how they got cool after the fight. And Perry lets Pete join the team. And it's like, I get it. Sometimes after a scrap, you like, there's some mutual respect there. Like, yo, we fucked each other up, but we still here. You tough as fuck. I'm tough as fuck. Respect. I get it. But sir being Perry, you're risking being disbarred and put in jail. Y'all are not even. Like, you basically just won a split decision in your fight against Pete. You can't be like, all right, well, all's forgiven. I won the split decision. We cool. You gotta kill that motherfucker. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. Yo, hey, we're good. Join the team. Like, all he did was lose. He being Pete. All he did was slightly lose a fight. That does not counterbalance betraying your friends to the point where they could go to prison. Like, nah, Pete gotta die, bro. Like, I like Perry and Pete together as much as the next guy, but that's not some shit where you scrap it out. You like, we cool now. No. Unless that is like your blood, like brother or your father or something. And even then, you might, I might at least have to send you to jail. like I can't forgive that shit, bro. That's way too much, man. That's like, if he beat the shit out of him, like curb stomp level of beat the shit, then you can be like, all right, it's squash. But no, you can't eke out a win like that and be like, we good. Nah. Anyway, Perry and Pete return to the office where Paul and Della are incensed that Pete is being brought to the team, and they don't even know that he did the gun thing yet. Perry tells them about Pete doing the gun thing, and my favorite part of the whole episode is Paul's response. Paul goes, not surprised, trash is trash. And I'm like, what the fuck kind of weak-ass response is that? I even put in my live Facebook commentary, I'm like, that's the best you got as a black man when you roasted the motherfuckers and say, trash is trash. But then as soon as I hit send on, that's the best you got, he goes, dirty fucking cracker. I said, oh shit, I guess he does have better than trash is trash. I'm like, man, where the dirty fucking cracker go? Like, he just asked like, trash is trash. Here's a fucking 6-year-old level of insult. Then you go dirty fucking cracker. Like, you went to elite level fucking, like you went to the top of the mountain for your insult. Anyway, it's at this point that Perry's story moves into the direction of like us figuring out what's going on. So like I'm just gonna like, there's not much else to say about Perry. It all kind of plays to the information that we learn. So when I'm going to just talk about the information we learned at the end, I'm not going to continue talking about Perry because I would just then be talking about little moments where he learned something that helped make the picture clear, where I'm just going to talk about the picture at the end. So for now, I'm going to move on to Della and Paul. Very little here for the both of them. But Della does discover another piece of the puzzle. Insisting that someone is pressuring Burger, she's like, really is willing to die unless someone is putting heat to Burger hypothesis. She goes to him again and is like, yo, Burger, you good? And he eventually reveals that he's being blackmailed with pictures of him getting topped off by another man. And he tells Della to stop looking into the shit and let the feds handle it. And both me and Della are like, what the fuck the feds got to do with this? And we don't get an answer in that moment. We will get an answer later, and I will talk about that at the end. Della then talks to this guy from the Department of Agriculture who was apparently the person who was behind the subpoenas for Brooks and that guy Goldstein, who was the produce guy. And she asked him if he still has the case file on Brooks. He's like, yeah, I got it. And this motherfucker like dying and dashes. Like he gets up and leaves. And then I don't know how much time passed. It felt like hours passed. And then somebody comes up and is like, yeah, he ain't coming back. Like, dog, Della got straight, what's that? No, not ghosted. That's not right. But Della got dipped on, and I don't know. That was funny to me, dog. Like, he hit her with a dive and dash that she didn't even fucking realize she had been dashed on. Like I said, it felt like it'd been hours. Like, it came back, it was like dark as shit. Anyway, I don't know. I don't even know if I fully remember it being dark. My hazy brain remembers it being dark. I don't know what the fuck it was. So moving on to Paul. Paul is still stalking out the corner looking for the blue Lincoln, and Clara comes up and not only brings him food, but offers to keep watch so he can sleep. And I'm just like, Paul, you better not ever fuck things up with Clara, because you will not do better than this, sir. That's top of the line right there, man. She brought you food to the stakeout and is gonna let you take a nap? Dog, I wanted to marry Clara in that moment. I don't care if they talk about, and I did care up to that point. I don't care if they talk about how much they love each other 10 times per episode. You can't lose that woman, Paul. But they do talk about how much they love each other too much. Like, there's conversations they have where, like, really your only takeaway is, oh, wow, they really love each other. Anyway, they see the blue Lincoln and they follow. Paul proves himself to be horrible at tailing people in general, but especially horrible for someone who's a cop or used to be a cop. He drives like fairly close behind the Lincoln, but then when the Lincoln pulls to the driveway, Paul pulls up right at the end of the driveway. And I'm like, you ain't gonna park a couple houses down? Like, what kind of scheming? And who taught you how to scheme, Paul? Anyway, Clara goes up to the house and pretends to be a Jehovah's Witness. And the woman inside is just like, yeah, you can come on in. What the fuck? Clara finds her on the couch, needle still in arm. And I thought that was funny too, because that told me that woman did not waste any time getting high. She put that car in park. She didn't make something to eat. She didn't get no water. She didn't get no juice. She didn't take a shit. Nothing. She turned that key in that ignition. That car was off, and that motherfucker said, pop! Time to get high. And I like also when she stood up, she just left the needle just dangling from her arm. I'm like, yo, she gets it in. She really gets it in. But she starts convulsing while Clara is inside, and her husband returns, and we learn that her husband is Camila's precious Phippsy. And also, while she's convulsing, the wife, there's this nosy white lady that walks up to Paul while he's sitting in the car waiting. And if Phipps' wife ODs and dies, that could be a problem, because that woman's going to be able to identify Paul. And I foresee that being an issue in the finale or next season, maybe. I don't know. But that nothing happens a show like this doesn't have shit happen for no reason. That woman walked up because, of course, one, in the 1930s, a white woman is going to be suspicious of a black man sitting in his car on her fancy ass block. And she live in a nice neighborhood because she live in Phipps' neighborhood, and Phipps got money. So that makes sense that she would walk up to the car like, oh, no, ain't no black man sitting up here. She didn't think the word black man either. I know he ain't sitting up here. So if that wife dies, that woman is going to be like, yo, I saw a black dude up here. But I don't know if there's going to be any reason for Phipps to believe anyone was even there, aside from the fact that, like I said, no, aside from nothing. Like, he has no reason to believe anyone was there. Unless the woman does live, and she's like, yo, I was so high, and then Josephine Baker came in the house. He's like, what? I don't know. I just feel like that woman who came with the Paul's car is going to be a problem. I forgot one more thing real quick on the Gallardos. Their aunt comes to visit Mateo, and she tells him that Raphael got into art school, and she gives him the letter, the acceptance letter. And eventually Raphael returns from solitary, and he looks completely fucking traumatized. Mateo doesn't give him the acceptance letter, and he balls it up. And my guess to why is that he probably feels like they might not get out of prison, so he doesn't want to give Raphael like false hope. Like, man, if we hadn't killed a white man, you could have went to art school. like he probably doesn't want to give that message. So I'm guessing that's why he balled it up, but I'm sure we'll find out next week. So moving on to what I believe is happening here. So into the section that I have labeled the bad guys. So we learned a lot in this episode about not just who killed Brooks, but what their motivation would have been. So I want to start from the top, and I'm going to attempt to lay out like what my understanding is of what's going on via my notes, rewatching a couple of scenes, and actually doing some Wikipedia diving. So I mentioned at the top of the video that we see Pete and Perry emerging from the water at the beginning of the episode. Well, we learn why the feds, and again, I mentioned the feds earlier, the whole thing about Berger mentioning the feds to Della. The feds were investigating Brooks and that dude Goldstein from the produce place. He's the dude who I believe got that subpoena early in the season. It was episode 1 or 2. And then later his head gets crushed in like a vice or something like that. I'm pretty sure that's Goldstein. And Obviously, we know what happened to Brooks. So they got subpoenaed. Neither one of them showed up. But they were being investigated because they were running a scam with produce. But I'm going to come back to that in a moment. Lydell was dumping the fruit that he was exporting, and he was having his ship meet up with another ship in the middle of the night, and they would then put oil onto Lydell's ship. Perry and Della's secretary, Marion, figures out that they were selling the oil to the Japanese military. So I decided to look up what was going on so I could explain it to you guys. We could all collectively have a clearer picture of what's happening here. So in 1931 and 1932, it was like September 31 to like August 32, something like that. Prior to this, the U.S. had sanctioned Japan, and so they weren't getting any oil that they needed for their expanding industrialization of Japan, right? So they decided to invade this place called Manchuria in China to get it. So I'm not going to tell you how that plays out. It's not important, but they occupy this Manchuria place for a while. The League of Nations says you can't do that, and they fuck off. That's essentially what and it runs up to like, I think they occupied it until the end of World War II, something like that. But that's not important. The important part is that they needed oil, and they weren't getting it from the U.S., so they invaded this place in China. So I guess that within the context of the show, Lydell is essentially giving Japan the oil it needed from the United States. The United States is not giving them legally. He's giving it to them illegally to help with their little, to help with their situation, which I don't think it's to help with the war or anything like that. I don't think there is a war, especially because this takes place in 1933. It's just him, like, I guess, I don't say a good faith move, but it's just him like, I know you need this. I know our country ain't hooking you up, so I'm going to hook you up. And he's probably getting, like, ridiculously fucking paid for this. But that's why we see him and Camila meeting with some Japanese guys early in this episode. But side note, this whole play sounds very treason-y to me. Like I feel like Lydell and Camila should be going to like Guantanamo Bay after this. But anyway, like I mentioned, they meet with some Japanese guys in this episode. And of note in that scene is when Camila talks to the guys in Japanese. And she talks about like setting up shop in Japan to avoid issues with shipping restrictions. And I didn't understand any of that at the time. But then once they revealed what was going on, it became clear that she was trying to like navigate around their inability to get oil legally from the U.S. or to avoid any issues with even the illegal way that Lydell is doing it. I don't know. One of those two ways. But she wants to set up shop in Japan to somehow subvert that. I don't know how being in Japan helps. It's the setting up shop in Japan helps since we're giving them the oil from here. You still have to cross the United States. You still have to cross, whatever water to get from the United States to Japan. I don't know why that would help. But I think the important aspect, the important takeaway from this scene is that I wonder if her talking in Japanese after having pulled the one guy to the side was essentially her way of saying, I want to set up shop in Japan since Lydell and Brooks fucked our shit up. Like, I like basically saying like, I want to move forward with you, like, just us. Like, basically her trying to cut Lydell out, and her talking in Japanese was a way of doing that, kind of like, making moves that he wouldn't be aware of. But whatever her intentions may be, like I said, the message of this scene is that she's kind of like big brothering Lydell. Like, and speaking of Lydell, he's over here talking about giving motherfuckers horses and shit. I'm about those, like, why is Lydell talking about giving a Japanese emperor some horses? Like, what the fuck's going on? But again, that makes sense a little bit later. But that's why Lydell was so pissed at her and called her a barren spinster afterward, because she was undermining him. But circling back to Brooks' scam with the produce, because I said he had a scam with produce, Brooks would then scoop up the produce that Lydell was dumping and would, like, use it on his casino boat and shit, I'm guessing. Like, free produce, but also hella illegal, right? So that's where the feds get involved. And that's how Brooks and Goldstein get subpoenaed. I don't know how they figured it out or how it came to their attention, but somehow they figured out that Brooks was doing some illegal shit with produce. So the Department of Agriculture was like, what the fuck, this ain't cool. And that's when they got subpoenaed. And the idea is that they were going to bring him in and question him about it. And there's a flashback scene in this episode too, where Lydell is trying to get Brooks to skip the country altogether to avoid testifying, I guess, in the subpoena. Lydell's concern was that if Brooks testified about what he was doing with the produce, what Brooks was doing with the produce, it could expose what Lydell was doing with the oil. But when Perry confronts Lydell about it, he admits he didn't want to have his son killed at all. He was trying to save him, which we know from the flashback he was trying to save him. He was trying to get him the fuck out of there. And he's like, I didn't want to kill my son. And Perry's like, well, who did? And we don't get an answer. But, at least in that moment. But we later do. We learned the real cutthroat here is Camila Nygaard, who it looks like sent Phippsy to pay that Ozzie Jackson guy, the one who works for Perkins. So, follow me. This is what I believe happened. They don't confirm it to this degree, but this is me kind of like not piecing together, but like remember shit from previous episodes. Camila paid Phipps $10,000. Well, she gave Phipps $10,000 or had Phipps get $10,000 out of her account, whatever, to pay Ozzie Jackson, the guy who works for Melvin Perkins, to kill Brooks. So Ozzie Jackson was supposed to kill Brooks for $10,000. Ozzie Jackson then paid the Gallardos $2,000 to do it for him and pocketed the remaining $8,000, which, if I'm being honest, is pretty smart. It got his ass whooped, and once Melvin Perkins found out about it, but Melvin Perkins would have found out about it if it wasn't for the shit with Pete trying to get him in trouble. And I also wonder if, in retrospect, if the plan to get Melvin Perkins in trouble had anything to do with Ozzie Jackson. I don't know. But let's see, where am I? Oh, lastly, we end the episode with Camila receiving pics of Della talking to Berger in the parking lot before the meeting with the Department of Agriculture guys. Basically, Camila knows everything. And it was the meeting where Berger told her about the blackmail. So we close with another thing that I was wrong about, which is that fat guy that was following everyone in previous episodes is not working for Hazel as a private eye to catch Della cheating. He's working for Camila, and he's photographing everything and everybody all the time, and she got all the information. So that's what we are meant to take away from there. And this sets up an interesting set of circumstances, I think, for the finale. Like, he has pictures of Della and Anita together. Like, could Della's sexual orientation be outed? Is she about to be blackmailed just like Berger was? Because remember, they're supposedly married, and Camila has pictures of Berger getting topped off, and now she also theoretically has pictures of Della out with Anita. So, like, those pictures could not just expose them for their sexuality, but it could expose them as, like, oh, hey, they've been running this charade where they're married, and the DA is not actually married. He's fucking all kinds of men. But you remember how I openly wondered if Camila had a thing for Della? Like, Camila, because of the pictures, she probably knows that Della's gay. She also mentioned in this episode something about, like, trying to get Della to work for them. And she's constantly bringing up, like, anti-man / anti-Perry talk with Della. And I'm just wondering, like, what is her play? Like, is she actually trying to get Della to work for her? Because she can't think that Della would do the kind of shit that she's into. So I don't know. I don't know what her end game is with Della. Maybe she just wants to fuck her. I mean, shit, apparently who doesn't? Everybody's fucking Della. Every woman's getting Della in this season. But closing out with a couple of thoughts. What's going on between Camila and Phipps? Like, I mean, they seem to have, like, they've every time we see them together, the relationship seems very contentious. And I think there seems to be a measure of resentment from Phipps. And there was a moment early in the season when he angrily said that he was going to be with his, like, actual wife or something like that. And now that we know that his wife is the heroin addict, I wonder if his disdain for Camila and that tension between the two of them is because he resents her for keeping him so busy, which allows his wife to buy smack every day from the black guys. It's like, if I wasn't doing all your fucking jobs and you got me out here killing white people and Mexicans and all this kind of shit, you have me doing all this shit, I could be at home with my wife stopping her from getting fucked up. So now if she does OD and die, Phipps might hold that against Camila personally. Like, if I wasn't doing your shit, I'd have been here and she maybe wouldn't have got that heroin and she'd still be alive. So, like I said, there was a lot to take out of this episode. I hope I helped you guys wrap your head around it. Be prepared for the finale. Let me know what you thought about this episode in the comments. Let me know if I was helpful with my research. I spent a lot of time researching for this video. And I will see you guys next week for the finale. And until then, peace.